Hello, my beautiful viewers. Welcome to Third Eye Champagne. I just wanted to give you a little disclaimer before you watch this. The full version is up on thirdeyechampagne.com. It's a very long, 2-hour and 45-minute talk between me and Casey Watson of Golden Gate Star Fort Command and various other venues. My dear friend Casey. So we are talking about Casey's favorite subject and one of his favorite theories, which he is fully on board with, the theory of Tartaria, mud floods, and resets of reality. I have to go into this saying this is a theory. I don't particularly subscribe to it, although Casey and I kick the can down the road quite a bit in this video, and I'm suspending my disbelief. I'm trying to suspend my disbelief. We get into a lot of stuff. We start talking about all sorts of things. It's really interesting, but I just wanted to say this, that be very careful when you start playing around with theories like this. It's so easy to get lost and believe stuff that is not quite right in this day and age. So I just wanted to give you a little disclaimer and let you know that we do kick the can down the road quite a bit on this theory, and I'm definitely joining in on that, but I don't subscribe to it at all. But I like to entertain new theories, strange ideas, what have you, every now and again, especially when I'm in the company of my dear Gemini friend Casey. So please do enjoy. If you want to check out the full version, that is at thirdeyechampagne.com.
I'm not even going to bother with my big intro. Everybody, you know Casey. It's Casey.
What up?
We're going to be talking about Casey's I can barely think, because I was like, I'm trying to like stay in a certain brain space so I can like go into a big translator. But basically we're going to be talking about Casey's big, well, it's not his theory, but it's a theory that it's kind of your thing right now. And it's about a place called Tartaria, right?
It's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's like the jumping off point. Like it was an advanced civilization that the theory goes that was, and this is like worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was an advanced civilization that was basically taken down and covered up, and they covered it up in a multitude of different ways. But one of the tenets of the theory is that all of these beautiful old structures, like a lot of this old architecture you see around, especially if it's like half buried and shit, those are the remnants of Tartaria, basically. So I will let Casey take it from there, because that's the most I know.
Yeah, I mean, that is essentially it. I mean, it's really hard to kind of explain to like in a simple way, because it's pretty crazy and deep.
what are some of the, because I know the World's Fairs are involved in this theory. So
Yeah.
what are some of the ways they've covered history out? Because basically, essentially, is the theory is that we have this whole history as human beings that has been, they've tried to erase it, and they've tried, the ubiquitous but they've tried to hide basically our own power from us, and all the old knowledge from us, keep it for themselves, of course, because this is what they do. But what are some of the ways they cover it? What are some of the ways this worked?
Yeah. So like you said, there was a civilization in our realm that was around, like, and a highly advanced civilization was around within the last few hundred years, and it was wiped out in a multitude of wars. In my opinion, that's where I'm at with it. I think it was war because, just based on the people in power now, like, they're warmongers. They've always been warmongers. So, like, it had to be an overthrow. And so the evidence that we have is that, well, one, Tartaria was taken off the maps. Like, there's hundreds of maps that show Tartaria as where Russia is today. And, there's, the levels of, so this is where it's going to start getting crazy. Basically, you really have to have an open mind that all his story is totally a lie. And so I think in the early 1800s, this is when either the war started, or maybe this was the end of the war. I kind of call this World War Zero. So, like, in 1811, 1812, you have the War of 1812. You also had the Napoleon Wars going on at the same time. And then in 1811 and 1812, there's three earthquakes. They call it the New Madrid earthquake, and that was in the Mississippi Valley. And there's claims that the Mississippi actually ran backwards for like 3 hours or some shit.
Wow.
And so that completely. So I think the Napoleon Wars and the War of 1812 and that shit are lies. Those are cover-ups of the war against, like, the Tartarian culture. They renamed it these other things, and so, and from there, like, all through the 1800s, just about every city all over the world was wiped out with multiple fires or multiple, whatevers. And that also includes, and we'll probably tie into it as well, the World Expos, which happened in just about all the major cities in the world. And they destroyed a lot of that stuff, all the architecture from that too, in the cover story. So that's where I'm at with that part. All through the 1800s, you have all the massacres of the natives, like, and this was going on before that, and they were doing that into the Civil War. So there was one of the biggest massacres, on record. It was like in 1863, and it was fucking the American military, the Union, ordered by Lincoln. They got a bunch of volunteers from California and fucking went slaughtering fucking natives. So I believe that is also a cover story. I believe the natives are remnants of that culture, and all the wars, all these events, all the fires, all these floods, fucking, after that, are just cover-ups for them going around stomping everybody out, like stomping out the remnants. And that leads right into the Civil War. I think the Civil War didn't happen as it said. I think the Civil War was a war against the Moors who were in the South, and that was kind of the end of them. And, also in the 1860s, you had Britain was taking over India, completely wiped out their culture and rewrote it. Um, there's all this stuff. You get into 1906 earthquake. I don't think it happened as it seemed. So you get into the mud. The mud flood and stuff ties into the war, and like there had to be. I believe that they had like direct energy weapons that um, caused earthquakes, or they had technology to cause earthquakes, and basically they, were blowing shit up. Fucking, I think most volcanoes are probably direct energy weapon blasts, and that's what they really are. Like if you look at them from the sky, like from Google Earth or whatever, they look like bomb craters. It's a trip. Um, so like these huge earthquakes, they cause liquefaction and flooding, mud flooding. Like it's a real thing, mud flow. Like you look it up, shit still happens. Um, there's a big flood in the 1860s in Sacramento. Like the whole valley fucking was underwater for fucking. It rained for 42 days or some shit. They called it like some arc winter or some shit like that. And they're trying to say there's supposed to be one coming back too. Um, so yeah, I tried to explain that in as simple a way as I could, I think. Um, but they've rewritten everything, you know, everything. Nothing can be trusted. Like his story it's what it is. It's his story. um, and it's full of riddles, and we have to look at it and read between the lines and see really what the hell went on.
How does the architecture tie in?
Okay, yeah, I was going to get to that. So, all over the world, there is similar architecture. The red brick buildings is like, one of the common ones. A lot of the stuff they call like, the Moorish, the Gothic. They called it Beaux Art style, like in the late 1800s. So, like everywhere you look, search everywhere. Louisville, Kentucky, fucking Lincoln, Nebraska, Rio de Janeiro. You'll see like civic center buildings, and they're all built in the late 1800s. Most of them fucking got demolished, either as part of the World Fairs or some crazy fire, like the Crystal Palace in London. It fucking burned down. Like a gigantic glass building fucking burned down. Like it's bullshit. They destroyed it. You know what I mean? And all the wars too. World War One, the World War One and World War Two were about destroying like the old world infrastructure and creating all new borders for all the different countries and corporations.
That makes sense. I mean, when you think of every place that was being bombed, especially in World War II, World War One, it never made any sense to me. I still don't understand how Franz Ferdinand calls World War One. Like it still seems like a bit much.
None of it makes sense. And so during this time, from 1850 is when they did the first official World's Expo, and a lot of us are under the agreement that the expos were like, they were re-education and like indoctrination fairs for the survivors of this new world. And the stories for most of them are ridiculous. They built these crazy freaking cities, and there's one they did in Golden Gate Park. They fucking built it in like 4 months, and there's like a miniature Eiffel Tower and all. The De Young Museum, like that was part of it up there in the park, and none of the timelines add up. And so they say they built all these buildings temporary for the expo, and so they destroyed them at the end. But then there's tons of examples of buildings that didn't get destroyed that were extremely permanent. and they talk about they built them out of lath and plaster and stuff. Like that's a temporary structure, but like Victorians in San Francisco are 100 years old with lath and plaster. Like that's solid shit. You know what I mean? Like, so like we can get more into the expos and stuff. It's kind of a big thing if you want, but like San Francisco 1915 Expo was a big one. Like all the marina was like these crazy structures that they said they built temporary, and the construction photos are shoddy. They don't make sense. And most of us are in agreement that it was kind of that's just all cover story so that they could destroy everything. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And like they said, it was built temporary, and yeah, they just fucking demoed it all.
So, going back previous, what do we know about Tartaria? Like, what do we know?
Well, we know that like, so another thing that happened in the 1860s was like the Bolshevik Revolution, and so that was the stomping out of like Tartaria in that area. Like from then, all the land, like Tartaria, just kept shrinking on the maps till it was nothing, and then it was Russia and like China, and like in the maps of Tartaria, it has China underneath, has the wall, the Great Wall of China, but China's on the bottom side.
Huh.
Tartaria is on the top. And I believe, we even in regular his story, they talk about the land bridge between Russia and fucking Alaska, and that all the natives, migrated from there. And so, just on that, so before so like this, Scythians, they're related to like I think they're kind of predecessors possibly to the Tartarians. I think like the whole West Coast and possibly more of America was all part of Tartary. It was like Tartary America or whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where was I going? Where are we going?
So, but like, what do we know anything about what kind of a culture it was?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So the free energy is a big one. Like they got energy out of the ether. They got energy from water, and they shared it freely. All the like the spires and all the roofing, the domes on these cathedrals and stuff is all tech that harnesses energy. And the buildings, the brick and everything is like a conductor, and it holds the energy. And so like essentially all their cities were set up as like a circuit board, and they still are. Just a lot of it has been destroyed, or they don't have it turned on for us,
Right. So
and so like it all shared, and so like it brings in also, it ties in the buildings were built to a frequency and a harmony, and I think a lot of the buildings were, they were all set to different ones, and they were good harmonies that projected out, or you go in the building and you were just doused with these killer frequencies, so they had that going for them,
yeah, it sounds close to what people say about Atlantis or Lemuria.
Sure.
And pre-Lemuria, it was called just Ur. There's another like mythic place, but it's the same principle. Is there is an advanced society that was somehow overwhelmed, and all of the information was lost. And it also ties into a lot of the theories about Egypt and the pyramids, because a lot of those theories are that those pyramids actually conduct energy, or they move energy around, but they're not turned on, or we don't know how to use them. It's kind of a similar thing.
No doubt. And
a different place.
Yes. Fuck, I was just gonna say something that had to do with what you were saying, but I lost it. What were we saying about the energy?
Yeah, with the you're so cute. With the pyramids, they say that the pyramids
Yeah,
were built to capture, harness energy.
right. And Atlantis and Lemuria. So like, I don't know. I'm of a mind to think that Atlantis and Lemuria were possibly like North and South America. Um, there's a lot of people who believe. I mean, the controllers like flip everything upside down. What's good is bad, what's bad is good. And
Right.
so I kind of have the idea that the new world is actually the old world, and they flipped everything around when they rewrote history to make it come out of Greece and Egypt and fucking Rome and all that shit.
Right.
So that's an interesting rabbit hole. There's a lot of people who subscribe to that as well.
Well, it makes sense because you have, the myth of Atlantis goes back to ancient Greece. I mean,
it's like Plato or some shit.
About in ancient Greece, way back in the day, there was this land, that was advanced and it disappeared. And then you fast forward to now, and we're saying the same thing. There was a place, there was a people, there was a land that had more knowledge than we did, and it disappeared. It's the reason that there has to be, in my opinion, some kind of grain of truth to that at the very least, because it seems, how they found, I don't know if you know this, but they've been saying that Native Americans had only lived on this continent for a very limited amount of time. It was like not long at all. And then they just found, like a year ago, they found this footprint. And it's like a 300,000-year-old Native American footprint. And they're like, oh shit. Like they had to rewrite everything because everything they thought about who lived here and when they lived here and how long they lived here was completely wrong.
Yeah, but we find that all the time. Like, if you start looking into his story, hardly any of it makes sense, and hardly any of it they actually have like any sustenance to. It's just like nowadays it's just paragraphs on Wikipedia or whatever. It's so hard to fucking get to books now. Everything's closed and shit.
That's true.
It's a trip. I mean, it's been completely manipulated, and I think there's lots of good evidence that it has happened a lot more recent.
Yeah.
A lot more recent, like 19th century, 18th century, into current times, really. But you can see this architecture everywhere. And when you start looking into it, you start seeing that most of it is all built in like the 1880s, so they say, like.
And you think there have been different resets throughout time? Like this has happened more than once?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been, I mean, who knows how many?
Yeah.
Even just like, it's hard to just, there's been tons, and like you can like break it down into little events as resets, like. For example, like the New Madrid earthquakes or like 1906. I mean, 1906 was clearly a reset of San Francisco, Whatever the fuck actually happened, like, it was a complete wiping clean of the slate and repainting the landscape, as they said, like 100% fucking percent.
That earthquake is very interesting because it's either intended malice or it's extreme incompetence. So for you guys, I've read about I know Casey knows all this, but because we live out here, but when the earthquake hits, right, they get a couple of fires, right? So they have some fires, and I want to say it started downtown and in Chinatown, I think. And so what they decide to do is go around all of San Francisco and fucking dynamite everything.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but they have the army out there. They have the
it was the army. It was the army doing it.
Yeah, it's the army doing it, and the army's out there, and they're shooting people dead in the streets. Yeah. I mean, that's a fact. That is not conjecture. That is not theory. That is a historical fact.
That's part of the historical narrative for sure.
Right. They were documented. They were shooting people in the streets.
General Funston was the one who's in charge of all the military guys blowing everything up. Yeah. So that's just, for me, like, that just says, okay, was the earthquake an actual earthquake? They took advantage of the situation, and just they had the plan. All right, next earthquake that comes, we're going to go with wipe out, San Francisco. And the Funston stuff, I think it'd be a cover story, anyways. It's probably, I'm thinking it was probably a man-made earthquake with bombs. Is this bombed out? I also think that nothing could have possibly happened.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, and maybe a few fires, earthquake, a few fires, because there's tons of pictures of people just standing around watching the fire, and it's really creepy. Like, there's ones like it's almost like people brought their picnic stuff to watch it, and it was an event, it was a production or something. So I think that it's a big possibility that fucking nothing got destroyed, because they supposedly they rebuilt everything in 3 years,
Right.
Fucking I mean, come on, they can't read. They said the whole fucking city was destroyed. Where are they getting these building supplies from? Where are they getting these builders from? Who are these companies who are building these buildings? It doesn't make sense. There's no bridges. They didn't, supposedly, but the bridges weren't built until 39, so they had to ferry fucking shit across the bay. Wood, lumber. You had to get the wood from somewhere with horses and buggies, up in Marin or wherever they were getting it from. It makes no sense. And by 1915 they had this huge fair with all these, fucking temporary structures that they destroyed right afterwards. And especially as the start of World War I, and they have this giant World's Fair Expo in San Francisco. It's crazy.
Right. I mean, even if you remove any of the theoretical stuff from all of this, it's still fucking weird. You know what I mean? Even if you take all of it out, Tartaria resets all of it, but you take it all out and you still look at what's going on, you're like, it makes no fucking sense.
Yeah. And every major city has gone through a 1906 type event. Every city, multiple. There was a big ass fire in SF in the 1860s or something. That could have been the first one.
Right.
First one on them, or and it's a trip. And then you start. There's all the pictures of the empty cities. Have you seen any of that?
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's really
because some are I think St. Petersburg is one of the empty ones, just empty, haunting photos. But then Moscow at the same time has tons of people.
Yeah.
It's weird. And Toronto, San Francisco, there's a whole panoramic of San Francisco where there's not there's one person you can find in the whole thing.
Right. Which makes no sense. I mean, San Francisco was a thriving city even before the gold rush. I mean, the gold rush obviously kicked it up a notch, but it was a Barbary Coast, man. They were not fucking around out here.
No, I mean they've completely written out the whole Californios story. Where this was Mexico. This was popping. These were big cities. They were settled.
Right. So how could you even have a photo where no one was in? It makes no sense.
Yeah, and then there's a big. It's you can look it up, and maybe I've showed it to you. It's from 1877. There's a huge there's a panorama taken from one of the fuckers, maybe from like Crocker's mansion or something like that on Nob Hill.
Huh.
And I mean, not only is there like no one in the streets, but the city is completely built out.
Huh.
Completely. And 1877, it's 20 years, 25 years after, I mean, California became California in 1850,
Right.
Like, they built the entire fucking city in 20 years. That's impossible. It's impossible.
Right.
And during the supposed gold rush where everyone was off gold mining.
Right. Which, well, again, I mean, the fact that, because I don't know too much about the World's Fair, but because I'm a Disney freak, because they asked Walt Disney to do a couple of things, right, for the World Fair in the 50s.
Yeah, Walt Hitler, you mean?
Wasn't a Nazi.
They're the same guy.
They're not the same guy. God damn it.
Yeah, Walt Hitler.
Oh.
Yeah.
But anyway, it seems very strange to me, and maybe it's just because we now live in a completely disposable society, but like, to just for the fuck of it, oh, we're gonna have a World's Fair, and like you said, we're gonna build all these buildings with legit materials, but they're gonna be temporary. Why? Why would you do that? It's not even cost effective. I mean, I really don't understand.
No. And they all these fairs lost money. None of them made money. They got most of the money for the fairs as donations and like from or whatever. Like,
so let me tell you, Uncle Walt, my favorite guy. So he does not pay anything for the World's Fair. So they asked him to create something. He ended up doing It's a Small World, right? And I think he did one other thing. But they said, oh, can you create something for the World's Fair? He said, sure. But he says, I'm not going to pay for it. So they find him a sponsor. The sponsor pays for everything. The sponsor pays for Walt Disney to develop animatronics, which of course made him, the biggest theme park that ever been. I mean, that, but he didn't pay for any of that. He never paid for that. He had a sponsor for that. He had a corporate sponsor for that. He may have had more than one. And then the best part is, at the end of the fucking thing, he's like, I'm taking all my shit with me. I'm putting it in Disneyland. And nobody cared. That to me is very strange, because capitalists don't do that. Capitalists don't say, I'm going to fund it. I'm going to pay for it. It's going to be temporary. And you can take it with you when you're done. And oh, incidentally, I just funded some major fucking technology that you developed. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big issues with the expos is that they made no money.
Right.
And that, all of the big movers and shakers were involved. All the big techs were being displayed, and they were indoctrination fairs as well. And like we can get into the exhibits are like really interesting too. But the whole thing. But to get back to the money, like that was what really makes no sense. Like,
right?
They've been doing the first one was in 1850, and they've been doing it ever since, losing money, but. Still, like, it makes no sense. And, like, they didn't spend their own money. And that's the thing, too, when you start looking at this shit, just these people these characters who are, our streets are named after, and fucking all these people fucking, even in, like, even in the narrative of his story, they're pieces of shit,
I know.
Whether they're like even real, but like, all these fuckers, like, man, I mean, I could go down the list, but you could pick any street in San Francisco and guaranteed it's named after some, genocider.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, like Nathaniel Lyon, fucking that dude was like, and most of these guys like Fremont, Nathaniel Lyon, fucking. John Fremont, Fremont was named after fucking one of the Cali founding fathers, all this shit. Like, not only like these guys were out, slaughtering natives, and then they went on to fight like on the Union side of the Civil War. It's like, and then they went back to slaughtering fucking natives again. It's like, I mean, that's their narrative. It's like. dude, come on, like, that's fucked up. We can't even stand for that, period. We can't stand for that shit, period.
Like, this is what they're admitting to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the narrative. That's the actual narrative, like, fucking, we got Fremont, 45 minutes away from us.
Right.
Fremont Street in San Francisco. We got, he has at Joaquin Miller Park, there's a monument built to him where supposedly he saw the Golden Gate for the first time.
Huh.
He's a hero. He was part of the fake revolution of the Bear Flag Revolt, where it was basically a inside setup to, that was kind of the final blow of the Mexican American War. Is basically they went in cahoots with like General Vallejo and these Mexican generals who were in the Bay Area at the time, and they went in with them and were able to hand California over to America, and all of them ended up with fat land and cities named after them and streets named after them, and fucking, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
like, I guarantee no one knows that Vallejo was a fucking general in the Mexican army who worked with fucking John Fremont to hand over California to America,
No, I didn't know.
I didn't know that either until fucking a year ago or a year and a half ago or something, But,
yeah.
It's crazy.
It makes sense, though. I mean, it makes sense, because, it's greed. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, Joaquin Miller slaughtered natives up at Mount Shasta and Castle Crags, and then came to Oakland. You know what I mean?
You know what's insane?
The poet of the West.
Right. It was just so acceptable to commit a genocide for literally like hundreds of years. It was 100-year-long genocide. It's still happening. Now it's just a slow, disgusting genocide, and they're just killing natives with alcohol and drugs and fucking fentanyl and no money and no food.
Yeah.
Like,
after they slaughtered them all, everyone was reprogrammed.
Yeah.
And set off on their reservation, and I mean, who knows what actual histories there is of,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, and they've compartmentalized like our realm. Like, Asian people live here, brown people live here, black people live here, white people live here. That was all purpose. And the languages. Everyone has different languages. That's all on purpose. So we can't talk to each other. We can't communicate, And it's like, oh, well, South America has this creation story. They're fucking savages. They're wrong. We're right. Everyone thinks they're right. It doesn't matter what everyone's story is, I picture when they're dividing it all up, they're like, all right, you guys go here, you guys go here, you guys go here. Here's an outline of the story, just try and hit these points. And the rest doesn't matter because, like you said, the savages, they spent that whole time in the expos indoctrinating people that all natives are savages, and like stupid, and we're the best. Like, that was part of the whole program too,
Well, not just that, but violence. That was part of it.
Well, it was legal.
So violent. They were scalping people. They were doing all this effed up stuff. And so we had to kill them because they were coming for us, which is a complete fucking lie.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guarantee, 99% of all those stories were made up,
World War I's over, you get 15 years, and then it's and then it's the Depression. You don't even get 15 years. World War I's over, and then the Depression hits, and then World War II hits. Then we have the Korean War. Then we have the Vietnam War. And I know I'm missing things in here. Then we had another economic downturn in the 70s, and it just seems like they're just stacking disasters.
I mean, yeah, they rule by fear. It's one of their big ways they rule, and that creating fear through different crises is a major way to control people.
It really is.
I mean, just like what is going on today and what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Just like, even, as recently as 9/11, you know, that created a fear of these terrorists in America. And next thing you know, like Patriot Act, is,
Yep.
people wanted it.
Oh yeah.
People wanted it. That shit didn't. That shit fucking cruised through so fucking fast. Like, yeah, I knew even back then, man. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me, dude.
Oh yeah.
You guys are so dumb. You guys are so dumb.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, it's create. You know, they create the fear, and they create the situation where they are the ones who can get us out of the mess, or
Yeah.
you know, it's that they. Well, it's an illusion that that's actually the case. They create that illusion magic trick that we need them. Right. We need them to get it to help, and that is a psyop right there.
It is, dude. You know,
because we don't need them for shit. They don't fucking give us shit, anyways, man.
Well, like you
They've
said,
only fucking fucked us.
Yeah, we're paying for water. We're paying for power. Like you said,
gas, oil, fucking
things that could be completely free, that should be completely free. They got us paying for, and paying out the ass for.
If it wasn't for profit, I mean, they had electric cars in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
If you look, I went through a rabbit hole because I was trying to figure out what kind of car was in this weird old picture of San Francisco, and it, you know, the picture said was like 1906, and I searched, and fucking there's a lot of different models of cars, and way more than I expected. It might not have been 1906. You know, I can't remember the date, but it was like early, you know, fucking. And there's electric cars, multiple electric cars on the market, you know, like at one point there was a fucking water power engine that
I knew.
I heard supposedly Shell bought the patent and fucking buried it fucking in some mud flood somewhere.
Which also makes no sense, because like you could make money off that too. So why wouldn't you?
Well, I'm sure they fucking have used that technology for something.
For something.
They just
we don't.
They you know. But it's like, you know, I mean, come on, like if we actually lived in a caring society, you know, who looked out for each other, like we wouldn't be fucking killing each other for gas and shit, you know, like there'd be no need for gas. Like I've said this before too, like who is the asshole that fucking said it was like a good idea to fucking go to work every day for some motherfucker, you know, for nothing, you know, whatever, like, and you're going to love it. And this is what you do fucking 5 days a week. You know, if you're lucky, most people fucking got to double time it up. Fucking like, no one just started doing that fucking out of the blue. Like people were programmed and told to do it.
No, I mean,
you know, and like this is, you know, and like fucking like, and that's part of the whole fucking, it's the rat race. It's legit. They keep you distracted. They beat you down where you don't care. You don't question, you know, they feed you all the information, and you're so fucking concentrating on the illusion that that's all you fucking live for. That's your life.
And you know, parallel to that point, because you and I are mostly, we don't work within corporate America mostly. I mean, for the most part, you know.
Yeah, no, I can't. But I can't do a 9 to 5.
Oh no,
clock in, clock out.
But I found, even though I'm not working for somebody else and I'm not working, you know, fucking 40 hours a week, shit, as someone who has to consistently produce content, not only for social media, but also for my website, for my paying members, it's just another form of a rat race. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm not doing it for somebody else, but I'm still on the hamster wheel. You know, I'm still caught up in that. It's very difficult to step out of it. It's very difficult.
For sure. I mean, at least you're doing something you want to do. And, you know, sometimes you got to take little victories, you know, like a lot of little victories add up, you know, like, you know, and every victory you fucking put in the win column, you know, so it's a game. Like they're playing a game, and like they're at an advanced level, you know, they've been at this shit for a long time. Like they've been programming for a long, long time, and they're really good at it. And it's hard, fucking.
Yep.
I mean, you just think, dude, I trip out and like no one knew that they smelled bad until someone fucking gave them a bar of soap and said, "Hey, you smell bad. You should buy this from me and wash yourself."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was just that wasn't like a concept, because that's just how you smelled, or whatever.
Right.
Sure, you could put whatever you put. Okay, they had perfume or cologne or whatever.
Right.
But that's that's a program in it up that, that was the same program, like
Well,
I've watched some videos and listened to people. I mean,
which,
super interesting.
Was another conspiracy theory that ended up being true. FYI.
Totally. A conspiracy truth.
Yep.
Yeah, and they, totally. You can get in all kinds of, start going down the MK Ultra rabbit hole.
Oh, dude. What?
I mean, just
that documentary you sent me. That it was like 4 hours. I watched the whole thing. What's it called?
The Minds of Men.
The Minds of Men. You guys, you gotta go watch this thing. I was glued to it. It blew my fucking mind. And it's real. It's all real. Like this is not, it's proven.
Yeah.
Again.
It's a mind blower.
Yeah.
It helps understand that like they've been up to this for a long time, because even just like with, they released, even just the info they released, which is probably just a very, very small, section of what actually happened.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They were messing with Wi-Fi back in the 50s. Like they were completely mind controlling people back then in the 50s.
Oh yeah.
And so even if that's if that's the official narrative, then you have to think, I'd add another 50 to 100 years to that. They've been doing it for that long.
A lot of that gateway stuff that they released, so much of it is heavily redacted. We don't know.
Totally.
It's fucking crazy.
And we never would, yeah.
No.
But yeah, man, that shit's wild.
No. Even the stuff the federal government flat out came out and said psychic ability is real, telepathy is real, remote viewing is real. Like they came out and said it's all fucking real.
Yeah, they had the Stanford had the remote viewing fucking thing or whatever. I forget. It's been a while since I thought of that one, but that's legit.
Yeah, no, it's real.
And supposedly they were like fucking. They'd be like, supposedly like this is this obviously cannot be confirmed, but these are the stories that had popped up. Like supposedly, during the Cold War shit.
Yeah.
There'd be like there'd be remote viewing fucking battles of our guys would be trying to make like Gorbachev say stupid shit on like a press conference, and their guys would be trying to make Reagan say some stupid shit fucking during his speech. Like I don't know, who knows if that's real. Pretty cool, pretty funny and cool story, regardless.
All right, I'm running out of steam. We gotta say goodnight. Jesus, we've been on 3 hours.
Yeah. We didn't even get to any reading. See, this topic is huge.
It is, but I love it.
And we me too. Like, and we barely even like scratched it as well. We got pretty cool and deep, and there's so much more. Fucking, we barely touched on a lot of stuff. We barely touched on like the mud flood.
I know. I think this is going to help a lot of people get where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, maybe, totally. Yeah.
A lot of
Hopefully
them,
it opens the door.
Yeah, they were like, I don't understand this. Like, I don't get I don't get it. Blah blah blah. I was like, okay, we'll have cases.
Maybe after this comes out or whatever, we could do like a live one where we could answer questions and shit people have.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be way awesome.
And then, maybe I want to read on shit because I want you to read on shit because I'm super interested just to see what.
I know. I was going to do a really quick wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I'm Kirsten. That's Casey. He's one of my favorite people in the world. I'm going to give you all the information you need to know to find him. Thank you for being here and good night. Okay.